welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. I thought I would do a media book collection overview. So this is mostly my entire media book collection. I've got one or two that are in storage that I just simply can't be bothered to dig out. So it's going to be everything other than the couple that I've got, which I think is a Punisher media book and a Wolverine steelbook. There may be a couple of others, I don't know, but they're the ones I remember. But this is everything else which I haven't put in storage. So media books tend to be a fun little kind of limited edition that you'll tend to get from normally Germany, Austria, sometimes from France. You'll get some from other countries here and there. So yeah, but what I like about them is that a lot of the times you'll get movies that you don't really get much in the way of like limited edition. You tend to get a lot of kind of like B movies and stuff, which are quite fun. I will say some of these covers are a little bit on the suggestive side, so you've been warned. There is a little bit of kind of artistic nudity with some of these covers. Anyway, let's crack on. I have put them in kind of genre order. So we'll start off with action, and I've only got really one. I have another movie on order actually at the moment, but it's not here when I'm doing this video. So this is The Hunted, and I believe this is the only way you can get this movie on Blu-ray, at least currently. And this is a Christopher Lambert movie that is, I really enjoy. It's kind of actually like a ninja action movie, like a martial arts one. You wouldn't get that from this cover, but it is a really decent, I think, martial arts movie with a great sequence where a bunch of ninjas kind of go on that kind of bullet train type thing and kind of slashing their way through. So yeah, that's The Hunted. If you like a kind of good action movie, I can suggest tracking this one down. Now we'll have a look at some superhero ones, and I have a few Marvel ones, and this one is actually a French one, I believe. So this is the original Iron Man. It's quite a thick one. That's one of the other things about media books is there's not really a standardised size, so they can be different kind of sizes and things, which is a little bit annoying when you want to display them, but you know, it is what it is, I suppose. Yeah, this is the Iron Man one, Blu-ray and DVD, and that is, I believe, a French release. Next up, this one actually has 3 films on there. It is the Captain America Death Too Soon, which was the sequel, and the Doctor Strange movie. So these are all the older movies, even like the pre-Matt Salinger Captain America. So these were TV movies that I think were made to be like pilots for TV shows that never really happened. And you can get the 3 different covers for each of the 3 movies that are on here. I like this cover because it's kind of like the art is the most, kind of well done, if you ask me. But the other ones are kind of more Jack Kirby style artwork, but I like this one, even though it's a little weird having it as Captain America 2. But yeah, and you'll notice Christopher Lee on that one. But yeah, the movies are kind of like so-so, but it's nice to have, as I say, a limited edition for a more of an obscure type film. Certainly not obscure though is Deadpool 2. And I kind of just quite like this art on this one because it's kind of fun, sort of chibi design, kind of quite random, that is all about Deadpool. So yeah, that's a pretty good one. As I say, when the media books come out, quite often the same release will have multiple different artworks, so you can either get them all if you're loaded, or you can obviously choose the one you like the best. We have the original Deadpool, and as I said, this one is a slightly different size. This one's actually a thinner media book, possibly even you'd call it a digibook rather than a media book, and I think it's slightly not quite as tall as well. So again, even with another Deadpool, it's still a kind of a little bit of a annoying in that respect. But there you go. I still like the artwork. Next up, we have Punisher Warzone. This is personally my least favourite out of the Punisher movies. They are quite often they're limited. This one, for example, is limited to 555, and I have I don't know if you can see on there, it says 310. So yeah, they tend to be for the most part made in such small quantities. Then we have the Punisher Thomas Jane version. This one's actually not sealed, so I'll quickly open up. So if you've not seen a media book, you can kind of have a look. Now, they'll tend to be in the native language, which will be German for the most part. But there's lots of kind of pictures and stuff, which is quite cool. And like I said, it is just a nice release. Obviously, you can only really read it if you do speak whatever the native language is from wherever it was produced. Yeah, but that's a German one. And as you can see here, it's 666 and mine is 123. Then we have the Dolph Lundgren, the 1989 Punisher. I do have another version of this, a different one from Koch Media. This one's from NSM, but the other, as I say, the other one's packed away. Yeah, but I quite like this. This one is limited to 333. And again, this one, I won't open them all up, but I'll just give you an idea. And interesting in this, for example, this one has the work cut, which is kind of like a extended version of the Punisher. It's not complete, it's not finished, so it looks a little bit ropey. What you will find is that Mediabooks will sometimes be grey releases, so they're not always official releases. There's like tons of Punisher releases from Germany, and for the most part they're grey releases. Now that's a whole thing if you don't know what a grey release is. It's not a bootleg, but it's not an official release. It is a third option, but it's a legally produced one. Anyway, that's the end of the lesson for grey releases. But yeah, Punisher 89, I do like that Pozo from London. Next up we have Blade Trinity, and that reminds me I do have the original Blade on Mediabook as well, but it's not here, so it must be in storage. So I do have two of the Blade Steelbooks. I don't have the Mediabooks. I don't have the second one, however. So there you go, Blade Trinity. Cool cover though. So then for a non-Marvel superhero we have Orgasmo. Obviously a comedy movie from the makers of South Park. And we have a DC in here as well. This is Swamp Thing, directed by Wes Craven, of course, and this is limited to 222. And there was two Swamp Thing movies that were made around this era. That starred Dick Durock as Swamp Thing. Right, so science fiction that we have Dread. And again, this is an example of just a very small style media book. We have Sador, but probably known more as Battle Beyond the Stars. This is one of my favourite science fiction movies. I do love this film. I prefer to get them in the English title, if I'm honest, but sometimes they're just not produced like that, so you've just got to kind of suck it up and get the, the title that it's released on, but there you go. Turbo Kid. This is a 2015 movie, and it's kind of like it's a Canadian film which is homaging the kind of the Mad Max of style of movies, but it's very, very fun and super violent, but in a kind of cartoony way. I'd highly recommend Turbo Kid if you haven't seen it. Right, you remember when I was sending you some rude pictures? There you go. Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity. Now, interestingly, a lot of these kind of like these newly commissioned artworks, they'll often feature naked women when there's not really a scene like that in the movie. So this is what I mean. So when you're talking about grey releases, do you think the studio would authorise that? Of course they wouldn't. So, there it is. But yeah, so that's... This is kind of like a low-budget science fiction movie. It's effectively like The Most Dangerous Game. Galaxina. This was one of my favourite science fiction kind of movies when I grew up. It isn't, on rewatching it now, it's not brilliant, to be brutally honest. It's kind of like a spoof of Star Trek and Star Wars. And the main actress here, Dorothy Stratton, was murdered just before the film was released. So, you know, this was sadly a career cut short, and you can see here that's limited to 500 pieces, just there. Next up is Excalibur, and this is the French release. As you can see, well, a lot of these have this premium collection, but it's you know, I like this movie. I know it's somewhat of a divisive film. I like it, but yeah, it's a fun film, a bit long maybe, but I think it's somewhat classic in my opinion. Next up, we have I think it's just called Barbarians. This was the UK. This was the English title of it. The Barbarian is the German title, but it was originally just called The Barbarians. And there's got a couple of bodybuilding guys who played these twin barbarians. And this, I remember this when this was younger in the video shop. This was an 18 certificate. And I always really wanted to see it. When I finally got to see it, I was expecting this like really hardcore movie, and it really isn't. Yeah, so but the Barbarians. Next up we have Hundra, and this is kind of like an Amazon, female Amazon warrior style movie. This is a relatively recent one in the collection, and it's somewhat forgotten about, I would say, to be brutally honest. But you'll notice on here the soundtrack is by Ennio Morricone, and that one is limited. This is number 24. Oh, limited to 222, and I got number 24. Next up, we have Sword and the Sorcerer. This one I would say is maybe a little more well known. I noticed this has got a few releases over the last couple of years, and there's even another one coming out in the UK. Not a Mediabook, it's kind of like a special edition, release. And this one I think most famously is about this sword, which kind of has 3 blades and 2 of them kind of shoot out. So yeah, it's limited to 500. I should have worn my glasses for this one, clearly, but there you go. Next up we have Gore, and this is a kind of like a fun, it's more like an alternate reality sort of movie, and there is 2 Gore films. I can't remember if the second Gore film is on this one. I don't think it is. Yeah, so it's not considered one of the best literary classics, I have to say, but you know, if you like a very cheesy sword and sandals movie, then check out Gore. Next up is Amazons, which I kind of like. I think this is actually one of the better low-budget kind of sword and sorcery movies that sort of came out. In this one, the Amazons are like they're like the special forces of this kind of military kingdom. So we have all these Amazon warriors, and they're like they have like male soldiers as well. But the Amazons are like kind of like almost like the Navy SEALs of this kingdom. They're like the specialist warriors. So it's kind of quite fun. Next up we have Barbarian Queen. There's actually 2 Barbarian Queen movies, but they haven't released the second one. Not yet anyway, not at the time of doing this kind of movie review. Deathstalker, I would say, again, relatively well known. This is actually a sort of fairly well known series if you are familiar with kind of lower budget B movies. There's actually 4 Deathstalker movies, and there's actually an unofficial remake and then a newer official Deathstalker sequel, which is currently in production as we speak today. But this was the first one. I think Rick Hill played Deathstalker in this one, and he appeared again for the 4th movie. Deathstalker 2. And the Deathstalker 2 had a much more of a comedic tone to it. Different actor played Deathstalker. A lot of people like this one the best. They didn't release any other Deathstalker media books currently. This one is, well, the original title is called The Sorceress. It was kind of re-released under a couple of other titles, but it was, I think the original movie is called Sorceress, or The Sorceress. And this was the first movie that had this kind of chimera creature in it, which was reused for other films, and you'll see one again in a minute. So this is one of the earlier kind of low budget sort of fantasy movies, and this had these women twins who were the kind of the central characters. It's quite a bit of a sexy one, this one. And then we have Wizards of the Lost Kingdom, which has that same chimera on it, and it uses the same footage from that sorceress in this movie. So this Wizards of the Lost Kingdom, of which there is a second Wizards of the Lost Kingdom as well, is very much a hodgepodge of reusing footage from other films and then kind of filming a little bit of original footage to kind of tie it all together. So it is very much a Roger Corman production. Then we have Warrior and the Sorceress, or again that is the British or English title for it, I should say. David Carradine in this one, and this is kind of a take on the Yojimbo story. You probably have seen a very similar story if you're a Western fan in the Dollars trilogy movies. Fistful of Dollars, I think, used more or less the same plot as this. And interesting, this one's actually a DVD media book rather than a Blu-ray one. It's the only one that I've got which is a DVD one, and I don't think you can get it on Blu-ray, at least on media book format. Yeah, so there you go. The last of the fantasy ones is actually an Italian one by a good old Fulci here, and Conquest. And this is a really out there movie, limited to 2,000 pieces. And I have 303. It's quite a fun movie, lots going on. I think it's got Sabrina Sayani in it, who I had a bit of a crush on when I was younger. Right, so we're going to move on to horror now, which is the biggest pile. It Follows, again, this is a small one, small little version. Dog Soldiers. This, I believe, was the first 4K release. Now, I don't have a 4K player, so I can't tell you, oh, this version's better than that version or whatever, but because I don't have a 4K player to begin with. But I know that it had that kind of special release. I've got Dog Soldiers like 3 times. I didn't need the special release after this one, so this was fine. Although it's one of these little stubby media books, which is annoying. Then we have another Wolf Cop, which is the sequel to, obviously, Wolf Cop. And this is obviously a homage to the Stallone movie Cobra in regards to this kind of artwork. I think it's brilliant. At least the artwork it is. The movie is so-so, if I'm honest. But I just like that cover so much, I had to pick it up. So, yeah, 444. Mine is 275. So I don't have the biggest collection of media books. This is why I can kind of get it all down in one video. But I seem to have a lot of werewolf films. So Howl, this is a decent British werewolf movie. I think 2016, I want to say this came out. It's worth your time. But then we have Bad Moon. And this is, I think, to this date, is the best on-screen werewolf, especially considering the budget. This was a newly commissioned artwork on this one. I was tempted to get the original one, but I kind of quite like this newly commissioned artwork rather than the original artwork, which is that, was I have on Steelbook, so I thought I would get the media book with a different cover on it. And this one stars Michael Paré, and is based on a novel called Thor, which is about a dog that protects a family from a werewolf. The transformation sequence is a bit crap because it uses old school morphing CGI, but the actual practical werewolf is fantastic. And then we have Where. Again, it's one of these covers which are a little bit sexy when there's no scene like that in the movie. You know, you'll quite often find that there's the sexy cover for whatever film it's in. Yeah, and this one is 60 out of 600. This is kind of a quasi found footage, trying like a realistic werewolf movie, if you haven't seen it. Next up we have Creatures from the Abyss, which is a kind of like a somewhat out there creature feature, kind of aquatic monsters from the deep style movie. It's quite a lot of fun actually, this one. Next up we have Waxwork, where a bunch of kids go into a waxwork museum and all the creatures come to life, including a werewolf, Dracula, played by Miles O'Keefe, who played Ator, for example. This one is 666, and mine is number 98. And then we have Waxworks 2, Lost in Time. Returning Zach Galligan comes back for this one. This one ends up being more of a fantasy film. You've got a small role for Bruce Campbell in this movie. And this is limited to 555. I didn't like the original artwork for this movie, so I got the newly commissioned one rather than the original artwork, which I've never liked. So there you go. Next up we have Return of the Living Dead 3. And again, this is newly commissioned artwork. Again, you've got a little bit of a nip on that one. A little bit of nippage. Although that is it's not dissimilar to the original artwork, to be fair. But again, I kind of quite like the newly commissioned artwork. This one is limited to 333, and I have number 67. And sometimes with Mediabooks, it's worth pointing out, they'll re-release them with different artwork. So you end up having this kind of, when this run came out, I think there was like 5 different designs, and then they've more recently done another version of Return of the Living Dead, so you know they tend to kind of come around again. So Dead Set. This is actually a TV mini-series, a British TV mini-series about the zombie apocalypse. And if you're familiar with the reality TV show Big Brother, effectively it focuses on a group of Big Brother housemates who don't know that the zombie apocalypse is going on outside, and eventually they kind of find out. But yeah, it's kind of quite fun and actually fairly brutal and quite nihilistic as well, I have to say. We have the Night of the Living Dead. This is the remake. This is the Tom Savini remake. I think it was 96. This came out, and I'm going to be controversial. I prefer the remake to the original because it's more or less the same movie, but with much updated special effects. So yeah, I know the original was a classic and was a trendsetter, but I prefer obviously the higher production of this one. And this one's limited to 500 pieces. They did change a couple of bits in the story, but it's practically the same sort of storyline. And here's what I'm talking about, Scarecrows. This is one of my favourite horror movies of all time. And we get a nice limited edition release, you know, on Mediabook. And I champion this movie. I love it. I think it's genuinely quite a scary movie. But I say this to people and then they go, "No, it's crap." But I love it. I love this movie. They had quite a lot of production issues when making this, but I love the end product. So next up we have The Deep House, and this is a relatively recent pickup for me. And this is kind of a modern found footage movie, but the interesting concept with this one is that it's all underwater. So this couple are professional divers, and they investigate this house which has been submerged in this lake, and the house happens to be haunted. They're all in diving gear. It's really unique, and I would recommend this one. I like this one a lot. I know other people aren't as keen as me, but I thought this was a great movie. Next up we have The Monster Project. And this one was like a little bit of a weird one, because I remember when this came out, and this ended up having like a little bit of hype, at least in the kind of the horror circles, for like all of about a week. Because it was like, again, a found footage movie where they have, I think it's like a vampire, a werewolf, and something else. I can't remember now. A demon, like a possessed person, all meet in this one house. Where this person's interviewed them. And obviously it all goes tits up. There you go. ABCs of Death. This is an anthology movie with every kind of like little segment being based on the letter of the alphabet. I haven't actually ever got around to watching this. I bought it and still haven't seen it. There you go. This next one I actually got on a Facebook group. This guy says, "Oh, he messaged me, do you want this?" And I'm like, all right. But I haven't watched. I have no idea what it's about. It's a Japanese movie. Creepy hide and seek. I just thought that looks absolutely crazy, and yeah, he sort of said, do I want it for like 15 quid or something? I was like, why not? So I got it. Never got round to watching it. Probably never will, if I'm honest. Right, Benny Loves You. This is a quite a fun, more recent movie about a killer soft toy that kind of comes alive. But what I liked about this one is the soft toy isn't kind of like scary looking, like Chucky when he's kind of, you know, angry and stuff. He's always kind of cute and cuddly looking, but he's like, and he kind of has a squeaky voice. And it's really bizarre, but it's just, it's quite a fun film, you know, just worth watching if you haven't seen it. And then Savaged, which is also known as Avenged. And this is one of those movies that I watched like way back, and it's one of these like little B-movie nuggets that I thought I really enjoyed. It's effectively like a version of The Crow meets I Spit on Your Grave, is the best way to describe it. So this woman who's like deaf, I think, is driving across country, and she ends up getting like raped and murdered by this kind of gang of drug dealers or something, and she comes back as a kind of Native American sort of spirit and gets revenge. It's really good though. I really enjoyed that one. Next up we have Near Dark, Catherine Bigelow's vampire movie, and this one has a kind of some of the cast from Aliens, so Bill Paxton, Jeanette Goldstein, Lance Henriksen, and it's kind of a gritty, grimy vampire movie that kind of gets overshadowed by the likes of Fright Night or Lost Boys. I have to say I still prefer Fright Night and Lost Boys, but this is a good film. Next up we have Monster Squad, and I actually got this little extra card in it. So I got, because this was an exclusive one, so I got like a little card and the signature from, I think, the artist. But yeah, Monster Squad, effectively like a kind of Universal Monsters meets Ghostbusters. I don't love this movie as much as some people. I think it's okay, but I think as a movie, it doesn't quite stick together. But I still enjoy it, but I don't love it like some do. But what I do love is Fright Night 2. And again, this is one of the few releases where you can actually get this on Blu-ray. Fright Night 2, as it stands at the moment, and I do think there are plans to release this more widely on Blu-ray, but there's not really many releases. I think there's a Spanish release, and I think maybe a German release, but this is the Mediabook for it. Out of 2,000, mine's 410. Fright Night Part 2. Then we have Night Hunter, which I think is sometimes called Blood Hunter. And what you'll find is a lot of these like 90s and 80s action stars will have like an attempt at horror. Chuck Norris did it. Van Damme has done it. Lundgren has done it, and this has done the Dragon Wilson's vampire movie. It's clearly influenced by Blade, and that, in actual fact, this might actually have come out before Blade, saying that, but it's very like Blade at the very least, and it's only limited to 66 copies, this one, of which mine is number 8. So there you go. Then we have Evil Dead 2, a film I own probably about 20 times at this point, and I just didn't have it on Mediabooks, so I thought I would. This came across relatively cheap, so why not? I thought I'd pick it up. At least I have a version of it on Mediabook at 666. And then finally, Neon Maniacs. That is again the English title for this one, and this is the fun slasher movie, which doesn't really make any sense, to be honest. We have a load of themed, kind of like supernatural slashers just come out the Golden Gate Bridge, I think it is, and go on a killing spree for no real apparent reason, but it's kind of fun. And this one is limited to 666, of which mine is 305. So that is my Mediabook collection. Any there tickle your fancy, any kind of movies you haven't seen, but I've maybe tempted you? Do let me know, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.